department's practices for locating missing children were generally consistent with many practices recommended by the CWLA. For example, the department has 2 classifications for children missing from care, runaway and missing, and the missing includes abducted children, and its definition for abducted children is consistent with statute. It also maintains a hotline that can be contacted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to report children missing from care, requires its caseworkers to notify law enforcement and other key stakeholders within 24 hours about children missing from care, and requires timely documentation of a caseworker's efforts to locate these children. However, we did find that caseworkers did not always comply with the department's documentation requirements in the 20 cases that we reviewed. For example, caseworkers did not always document that all required notifications were made or document their efforts to locate children within 10 days of making those efforts per department policy. The department did implement a bi-weekly review process in 2020 that could help ensure information about children missing from care is accurate and up to date in its case management system. The review process includes department staff validating that the child's missing from care status is correct, including that the child is still missing from care, and reviewing that required notifications to law enforcement and other stakeholders were made and that efforts to locate children were documented. Additionally, the department reported that it works with law enforcement on a case-by-case basis to locate children missing from care and indicated that jurisdictions vary in their willingness and capacity to collaborate with the department. However, to facilitate collaboration between law enforcement agencies and child welfare agencies, both the CWLA's practice guidelines and companion guidance for law enforcement recommend developing and implementing formal agreements or mutually agreed upon protocols that address various elements of coordination, such as an agency's roles and responsibilities and information sharing. The department reported that formalizing expectations with law enforcement would be of value, but that establishing a formal agreement with each of the approximately 150 law enforcement agencies in Arizona would be impractical.
I do want to highlight that the findings inside of the audit weren't that the team was not taking the action. It's the challenge for us was to document it so there was clear evidence that we took the action. And a couple of other things I did touch on, the by age, it is available. We can take an action and send it to you so you have the runaway children by age. I did want to highlight on the MOU, there was a recommendation, some guidance from the Child Welfare League of America to enter into an MOU with law enforcement. We didn't find it, no jurisdiction in the country had an MOU, so it was a great piece of advice that nobody had ever done because it really wasn't practical. We're in conversations with our law enforcement and partners, and they're great partners. The law enforcement teams, they work very closely with us. They respond and help us track down and identify and search for kids. And so although the MOU is not in place and no one has one from what we found nationally, ultimately the relationship to engage with law enforcement, us to notify them to help us to find kids is important. And that is also true with the passing of SB 1076 in 2019 that made it a crime in Arizona to abduct a child from foster care. And that happens when a parent, maybe, and this will occur where we're doing a visit with a parent and a parent will abduct a child from the visit and run, and we're able to engage in law enforcement. And it is a crime for a parent to do that, and there are varying offenses depending on whether that the parent brings the child back, whether we recover the child in the state, or we have to recover the child outside of the state. I think those are important pieces to know, and we appreciate your support in passing that legislation because with this, the kids are with us for a reason, right? So we can keep them safe. And being able to intercede and partner with law enforcement to recover children is important. There was a series of questions that was asked relative to missing ID placement and some specific data that was provided. And some of that data, it was a bit old just based on what was available. So the way it existed in Childs, you would see it when we would report it. You would have runaway, you'd have missing and abducted, and you'd have no ID placement. Within Childs, the way we actually denoted where a child was, unlicensed kinship, foster care, group home, we did that through a payment service authorization. There was no better way technologically to acquire it. So what would happen is that service authorization to pay a group home would expire. And when it would expire, the computer would register that as a missing ID placement. Not that we didn't know where the child was, but the way in which we gathered the information and reported it, it lost its link technologically. And so then that was a cue for our staff to go back and be looking at these expiring service authorizations and update them. And it was not the most ideal way to report where the child is placed, but within the system, it was the most logical way for the folks to get it. I've heard the insinuation that we do not know where those children, that is not and we heard from the brief sample that the Auditor General had done. They did not find that we didn't know where those children were, right? Ultimately, we said children on runaway status are on runaway status. We placed them there because we knew they had run away from their caregiver. Missing and abducted children were missing. We couldn't look, parents abducted them and absconded. And the missing ID placement, it was not an implication that we did not know where the children were. It was a reporting thing, not that we don't know where the children are. So I hope that brings a little clarity. Again, it's a technical reporting thing, and the insinuation for quite a while has been something nefarious, and it is such is not the case. A child's on runaway status, we're out looking to find those kids because those were bad outcomes. When kids run, we want to find them. We want to help them get the treatment they need, whatever is going on in that particular situation. 1.2% is on par to slightly below what we've seen nationally. But specifically speaking, our OCWI unit, our criminal conduct unit, does have an analyst team, which is kind of a one-in-the-nation group of people who do background research on parents and children, and they help us before we necessarily engage with law enforcement.